Now on the night team.
Parents, love your kids, hold your kids, kiss your kids.
So much pain.
I want you to know that you're not alone in your grief.
A day after high school horror. New details about the shooting suspect.
The suspect readied his rifle and began shooting into rooms 1215, 1216, 1214.
The lives lost.
It's hard to see someone motionless on the ground with blood all over them.
And the survivors reliving the rampage.
There's still so many that are suffering, which just breaks my heart.
So many questions remain after the mass shooting.
Hearts heavy and a sea of candles as thousands gather tonight to mourn the 17 victims lost in a mass school shooting.
It comes as new video surfaces showing the suspect, armed and dangerous, taking aim outside a home. The horror of yesterday's massacre overshadowed tonight by prayers for Parkland. Hello again, I'm Craig Stevens.
I'm Belkis. Nerea school community showing strength, spirit, and support. We have night team crews covering every angle tonight, beginning with reporter Joe Rhodes. He's live in Parkland where this large vigil was held. Joe?
Very emotional night, and still at this hour there are plenty of people coming out here to lay flowers and light candles at the feet of 17 angels here on this stage. Every one of them meant to symbolize those who were killed in Wednesday's shooting. There were thousands of people who packed the lawn out front of the Parkland Amphitheater here tonight, and for many, they were students, and it was the first time they were able to see their classmates since this tragedy unfolded. A sea of light during a time of darkness. Candles radiating from Parkland Amphitheater where thousands are mourning.
My home away from home was attacked brutally and tragically.
Emotions raw as a grief-stricken community comes together.
Meadow Pollock.
To remember every life lost at Stoneman Douglas High School.
Peter Wang.
Hearts heavy in this crowd looking for comfort. It's not easy. Hearing the pain from a father, Jamie Guttenberg's, speaking out on the shooting that took his daughter's life.
This is impossible. My girl, my 14-year-old baby. And for those of you who know my Jamie, she was the life of the party. She was the energy in the room.
On stage, 17 angels representing those killed Wednesday. Crosses dotting the field where people stood shoulder to shoulder looking for hope. Scenes these teenagers never thought they'd see.
Not in a million years. Even since we're in Parkland.
Students reliving the traumatizing memories as they find friends they haven't seen since a gunman opened fire in the halls of their school on Wednesday.
My friends are dead. Peter, Martin, they're dead. And those are my good friends.
This is our home. We go here every day. And to take that sense of safety away from us is the scariest thing in the world.
In the midst of the sorrow, a powerful message from Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel.
If you're an elected official and you want to keep things the way they are and not do things differently, if you want to keep the gun laws as they are now, you will not get re-elected in Broward County.
Followed by Chants for Change. Lives forever altered from children to parents in the small city of Parkland.
Nothing's ever going to be the same at school, ever.
Now, we know many of you want to help the victims and their families and those impacted by this tragedy, and we want to make sure that you do it in the right place. There is an official GoFundMe page set up right now. We've linked to it on our website, WSVN.com. You just need to head there if you would like to help out. Back out here live as people continue to remember those killed in Wednesday's shooting. They know that tonight's vigil will not bring complete closure to the families, but it is at least the start down a very, very long road of healing. We're live in Parkland. Joe Rhodes, 7 News Night Team.
Okay, Joe, and from Parkland to Coral Springs, where thousands turned out for a prayer service, Night Team's Walter Morris is live with this. Walter?
Well, Greg, of course, members of this community still grieving as they try and make sense of this tragedy and find peace. And there was a huge turnout here tonight as well. Let's go to that video from the service earlier this evening. Take a look at the crowd. Now, this is inside the church by the Glades this evening. The congregation packed, standing room only. They had to bring in extra chairs. Now, that prayer service to honor the 17 lives lost, the others injured, their families, and everyone affected by the worst mass shooting in the history of Broward County. The pastor addressing the congregation and sharing how he spent the afternoon consoling one of the parents who lost a child at Stoneman Douglas High School. Of course, many in the crowd knowing the families that were affected, but even those who didn't know the victims personally, saying this just hits too close to home.
I grew up in Coral Springs, and I had a lot of friends who went to Douglas, and it was a tragic time for these kids. I mean, I can't imagine what these parents are going through, you know. So I came out here to pray, pray for these kids, and pray that their families can find solace.
And many attendees as well as organizers saying they just hope those families can find some comfort knowing they have the support of this community. Live in Coral Springs, Walter Moore, 7 News, 19.
All right, Walter, and now to some new details in the shooting investigation. The 19's Nicole Linsalata is live in Parkland. She has more on that. Nicole?
Well, Belkis, we did learn a number of things tonight. We learned that Nicholas Cruz has confessed. According to Broward County Sheriff's deputies, he confessed to these murders. We also learned he took an Uber to the school. He was carrying a backpack and a bag. That is where the gun and the ammunition were contained. And then he spent 7 minutes inside the building, taking 17 lives. He escaped, went to a Walmart, a Subway, and a McDonald's. New video of frightened students walking down the halls, hands above their heads. Good job, guys. Keep those hands up. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And adults, both trained law enforcement and dedicated teachers, doing everything in their power to keep them safe.
Teachers, make sure you stay with your students, okay?
It's hot, I know, but we will get out. We'll be safe.
But 17 would not. This is the 19-year-old suspected of taking their lives and altering countless others.
Are you Nicholas Jacob Cruz?
Yes, ma'am.
Nicholas Cruz, shackled and dressed in jail orange, appearing before a Broward judge for the first time Thursday afternoon.
You are charged with 17 counts of premeditated murder. I have something very important to tell you. You're charged with some very serious crimes. You have the right to remain silent.
Besides a quick yes, ma'am, he did remain silent at the hearing, but he has been speaking extensively to investigators.
Mr. Cruz, you're going to be held without bond until further order of the court.
The hearing lasted just minutes before Cruz was led away, flanked by law enforcement. His lawyers say he's on suicide watch.
This young man is deeply disturbed, emotionally broken. He's gone through a lot in a very short period of time. And that does not minimize the loss of those families.
New details emerging from his arrest report. A witness says Cruz was carrying a black duffel bag and wearing a black backpack. At 2:21 p.m. Wednesday, the horror at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School began.
The suspect readied his rifle and began shooting into rooms 1215, 1216, 1214. He went back to 1216, back to 1215, and then to 1213.
Authorities say Cruz confessed to the mass shooting, telling people he decided to discard the AR-15 and vest with the additional magazines so he could blend into the crowd. And they say he legally bought the semi-automatic rifle, similar to this one, at a gun shop in Coral Springs about a year ago.
He bought the weapon in Coral Springs at a dealership called Sunrise Tactical.
The feds spent hours inside Sunrise Tactical Supply on Thursday. An attorney speaking for the gun shop owner said Cruz passed a criminal background check and there was nothing suspicious about the transaction.
The Morrisons here sold a lawful weapon to someone who was mentally ill, someone who fell through the cracks, someone who was not held accountable for their actions when they were expelled from school, someone who was not put into any sort of database, and someone who was essentially allowed to go unchecked before walking into this store and purchasing a firearm.
But what he did with that firearm turned his former high school into a massive crime scene. Investigators continued to remove evidence on Thursday, and President Trump addressed the American people from the White House.
My fellow Americans, today I speak to a nation in grief.
A nation suffering another mass shooting trauma.
Today we mourn for all of those who lost their lives. We comfort the grieving and the wounded. And we hurt for the entire community of Parkland, Florida, that is now in shock and pain and searching for answers.
Now, an important part of this story, according to the sheriff, is if anyone knows anything about this particular shooter, Nicholas Cruz, this confessed shooter, to give a call to the tip line that we're showing you right there on our screen. Also, anyone else that they feel like you might have that same sort of information that might help them to head off an event like this one. Seeing something and then saying something, according to the sheriff, they say extremely important. And we know that there were tips that had come in about, at least one that had come in about this shooter that they attempted to follow up on. But of course, it was too late. So give a call if you know anything at all about Nicholas Cruz. Reporting live in Parkland tonight, Nicole Ensalada, 7 News 19.
Meanwhile, tonight authorities have given us a moment-by-moment timeline of the attack in the minutes that followed after. 19's Sheldon Fox is live in Coral Springs to take us through that now. Sheldon.
Well, this guy ran, Craig, but he didn't exactly hide, not in the traditional sense anyway. He ended up at this fast food restaurant on his run from the high school and from police. And it's not the only one of its kind where this guy made a stop. The man police say is responsible for the mass killing Wednesday made more misery for those racing to track him down. Nicholas Cruz was nowhere to be found for more than a half hour after his killing spree. After leaving the high school, Broward Sheriff Scott Israel says
the suspect crossed fields and ran west, along with others who were fleeing, and tried to mix in with the group that were running away, fearing for their lives. The suspect arrived at the Walmart store.
The Walmart on Coral Ridge Drive, and he didn't just stop here in some desperate, hurried state. He actually had time on his hands at the restaurant within the store.
He bought a drink at the Subway and then left the Walmart on foot.
And it's pretty scary.
He'd run to a nearby McDonald's and again took a moment from all the running.
Sat down for a short period of time. This was at 3:01 p.m. and he left on foot.
40 minutes after his McDonald's stop, he'd be spotted, busted.
There's the guy being put in the back of the car.
And taken down.
The suspect was detained at 4700 Wyndham Lakes Drive in Coral Springs by an officer from the Coconut Creek Police Department.
I was the first officer to make contact with the suspect.
Officer Michael Leonard said at first he wasn't entirely sure the young man he spotted was the shooter, but his instinct and training told him that's exactly who it was. And he was right, says the FBI. The fear of a desperate mass murderer being on the run in Broward was over before 4 o'clock Wednesday. And before the booking process and all the questioning, he was taken in for observation quickly at the hospital. We're live tonight in Parkland. Sheldon Fox, 7 News 19.
And Sheldon, were warning signs ignored before the shooting? The Night Team's Brian Enton is live in the neighborhood where the suspect used to live in Parkland. Brian.
Belkis, there is no question tonight that there were warning signs. Classmates of the suspect that we've spoken to say they thought he was dangerous. We've talked to neighbors who say they thought he was violent, that they called the police over and over again, and that he was killing animals in the neighborhood. And we even heard from a man who says he called the FBI 5 months ago after he saw something online. Disturbing new video of Nicholas Cruz. You see the teen shirtless and shooting what appears to be a BB gun in his backyard last year. He then puts the gun in his waistband and goes inside. Do you think there were warning signs?
There were warning signs for sure.
Cops were at the house every other weekend. Like, it was absurd.
Neighbors say police were at Cruz's former Parkland house over a dozen times. They say he was hurting animals in the upscale neighborhood, harassing the other teens, and that he was angry, distant, and violent.
That's a red flag, so I'm just mad, like, we couldn't do anything before to, like, stop it. Like, I wish there's something I could have done.
His social media had lots of pictures of weapons, guns all over this bed. Here he is showing off a box of ammo, and he flashes a rifle with a closet full of guns in the background.
The FBI just left my house.
This man all the way in Mississippi says he called the FBI back in September when he noticed a comment on one of his YouTube videos. "I'm going to be a professional school shooter," it says. The username is Nicholas Cruz.
Well, the next day, I had 2 FBI agents standing in my office, taking down the information, taking copies of the screenshot, and asking me questions that, of course, I couldn't answer.
On Thursday, the FBI acknowledged they did investigate 5 months ago.
No additional information was found to positively identify the person who posted this comment. There was no connection found to South Florida.
So many warning signs that did not prevent the tragedy. Cruz's classmates say they were also suspicious.
We stigmatized him as the school shooter type, but like you just never thought he would do that.
Students say Cruz was expelled from school for fighting and having bullets in his backpack. On Wednesday night, detectives at the school examined the AR-15 Cruz used to change the lives of so many.
I'm friends with his brother, and I even asked him, I was like, do you ever think he could do something like this? And he told me no, and here we are.
So many people tonight wishing that something could have been done before this horrific shooting happened. The sheriff emphasized that they are still looking into the shooter's past. They're following up on all of those leads, and so far they've already interviewed 2,000 people. Live in Parkland, Brian Enton, 7 News 19.
Well, as Brian mentioned, officials say Cruz had a troubled past, and the 19's Franklin White is live near Parkland, where he'd been living the last few months. Franklin.
And investigators are still busy at work tonight, digging deeper into the suspect's life and searching his home. But new tonight, we're learning up to 39 calls were made from that home to 911, ranging from domestic violence to mental health issues. Investigators and the FBI working into the night, learning more about their suspect surrounding this home nearly 6 miles from where the deadly shooting spree took place. 7 News also getting a hold of this 911 call log over the past several years, showing BSO responding to numerous calls at the shooter's home. These calls include mental health issues, 911 hang-up calls, child elderly abuse, and domestic disturbance. It's unknown who made these calls or who the calls were in reference to, but again, they were from where the shooter was staying.
Starting about Thanksgiving, he moved in here with his friend, and their mom and dad took him in.
Jim Lewis is the Sneed family attorney who says the family had no clue Cruz could or would do something like this.
No clue that this kid was dangerous, okay? He had a firearm, and it was apparently locked in a cabinet here in the residence.
Court documents show Cruz's adoptive mother's death in November from the flu and pneumonia, along with the dad's death a few years ago due to a heart attack, left him without any close family. So the Sneeds took him in and got him into a GED class and helped him get a job at this Dollar Tree. The store posting this sign, expressing their sympathy and announcing they will not reopen for a few days.
It's shocking to know that someone you knew went through that, but to know someone who actually did the thing is even crazier.
7 News also learning the 19-year-old suspect was said to be a part of a white supremacist group out of Tallahassee.
Got beef with those if they feel exposed.
The Republic of Florida, or the ROF, is the name they go by. Members are known to be young, white men passionate about gun ownership and trained in knife fighting.
From what our investigators are telling us, it seems that this individual participated in at least one paramilitary operation.
The Anti-Defamation League claims the leader of the ROF says Cruz was even brought to Tallahassee once for training.
What part would an outside influence like that have played in this?
He was deeply troubled, enduring significant trauma, and very lost.
Again, no word as to what was found in that home and who made those calls to BSO and why. Reporting live near Parkland, Franklin White, 7 News 19.
And Franklin, now back to the 17 lives lost, sons, daughters, and a football coach who risked his life to save others. First, the children. We're learning more about their young lives and the bright futures they had ahead of them.
We have Live 9 team coverage. Jessica Holly is in Parkland, where she spent some time learning about them tonight. Jessica?
17 lives lost, including 14 children. Today, we're seeing their faces and we're hearing from their families, and we're learning how they want their loved ones to be remembered.
Lisa is so smart, beautiful, creative, outgoing.
Lori Al-Hadef remembering her daughter who was taken from her on Wednesday.
She has such a bright future.
Alyssa Al-Hadef's life, one of 14 young lives cut short. This is Elena Petty, her family calling her a vibrant, determined young woman loved by all who knew her. Gina Montalto was a member of the school's dance team and volunteered helping children with different abilities. Jamie Gutenberg was a volunteer with the same program. Friends say 14-year-old Martin Duque was a funny kid, sweet and caring. 16-year-old Carmen Shintrup described as an ambitious young woman who played piano. Nicholas Dworet was a member of the swim team, a senior who had just signed to swim with the University of Indianapolis. 17-year-old Meadow Pollock, also a senior, described as a loving and intelligent soul with a sense of humor everyone loved. Friends remembering Carol Lofren as a young woman with a beautiful soul. A family member calls Joaquin Oliver a good cousin, friend, and brother. 14-year-old Alex Schachter loved the marching band and played the trombone. 17-year-old Helena Ramsey, described as brilliant and witty, kind-hearted, and thoughtful. Friends and family also remembering 15-year-old students Peter Wang and Luke Hoyer. Grant and Trey Cox are Luke's cousins.
A kid with so much opportunity ahead, and it's shattered in an instant. There's really nothing that can ever prepare you for something like this.
14 students killed and 3 staff members, 17 families in terrible pain, desperate for peace.
One day at a time.
The Al-Hadef family searching for it in their faith.
I know Alyssa is in heaven with God, and she's safe there.
Right now, 17 families are suffering and making plans to say their final goodbyes. We're live in Parkland. Jessica Holly, 7 News 19.
All right, Jessica, now to the night team's Brandon Byer. He has more on that football coach who sacrificed his life to save some of those teenagers. Brandon.
And we're learning tonight he wasn't the only hero. Of those 17 killed, 3 were school administrators, the coach, the athletic director, and a teacher.
I think they lost the heart of the school. I just think that's what you want your heart to be: loving, caring, kind.
Those who knew Coach Aaron Feist best say Stoneman Douglas High School lost something irreplaceable Wednesday. The football coach died shielding students from danger, standing between them and the shooter.
He actually jumped in front of three girls, I believe, and he was able to block a bullet and at least save their lives.
It seemed everyone knew Coach Feist, including the man in charge of investigating his death, Sheriff Scott Israel.
When Aaron Feist died, when he was killed, tragically, inhumanely, he did it protecting others. You can guarantee that.
The head football coach speaking out about the loss Thursday night.
First of all, the first part of my day is going to be terrible when I don't see my buddy at the gate. That's going to be the hard part.
But other important role models were also killed Wednesday, including athletic director Chris Hickson and geography teacher Scott Beagle, who students say was killed trying to keep the shooter out of his classroom. 17 senseless deaths and shattered families. One former student says he'll honor one of the victims, Coach Feist, by trying to be more like him.
One thing that I think that we all could do as a community, as a school, as a nation, is just try to live a little bit the way Aaron did, and that's just be who you are, love anyone that comes into your life, and just try to give it the best you can.
Seems like pretty fitting and solid advice. Coach Weiss, just 37 years old. We're live in Parkland. Brandon Beyer, 7 News Night Team.
All right, Brandon, our live night team coverage of this mass shooting is just getting started. Stay with us for more in the newscast, as well as on WSVN.com and, of course, all of our social media platforms.
Meanwhile, at 10 tonight, a South Florida student is under arrest accused of making a troubling threat. Police in Davie say an 11-year-old girl wrote a letter threatening to kill students and teachers. It read, "I will bring a gun to school to kill all of you kids and teachers, B word. I will bring the gun February 16, 18. Be prepared, B word." Officials say the 6th grader was caught on surveillance camera slipping that letter under the assistant principal's door at Nova Middle School. She was taken to the Broward Juvenile Assessment Center and is expected to appear in juvenile court tomorrow.
More night team coverage of the Stoneman mass shooting is ahead. A student's gripping story as he hid from the gunman in a closet.
Coping with catastrophe, how parents can help their kids through tragedies like this one.
Surviving the scare if you were caught in an active shooter situation, would you know what to do?
And as we go to break this evening, strength and support, more moving images from tonight's emotional vigils. This is 7 News at 10.
Continuing our coverage now of the mass shooting, it was a crisis in classrooms as the gunfire rang out. Students hiding in horror.
Tonight we are hearing from one of them. Here is the night team's Andrew Dimbert.
Right now, apparently, SWAT is clearing people, and this is not a drill.
Manic moments inside of a closet as senior David Hogg and about 40 other classmates, helped by heroes, hide from horror.
It's only through the brave and heroic actions of a janitor that was, thank God he was here yesterday.
David says when his class heard the shots ring out, they ran out, thinking they were headed for safety. But David and his friends were headed directly towards danger.
Turns out I was actually headed with a group of people towards the shooter.
That's when a courageous custodian leaped in front and shuffled the students into a nearby cooking class, where another teacher took them all out of harm's way.
The janitor told us to stop. We stopped, and Chef Kurth took us in, about 30 to 40 students, in a matter of, I would say, 30 seconds, and it was amazing.
But the shooter was right outside, so the chef acted quickly.
There's one room for cooking and one room for teaching. There's a room in between that, though, that's about 100 square feet. She put us all in there, about 30 to 40 people again, and we just packed in there like sardines. And
the chef and janitor weren't alone, others stepping up to save students' lives.
Teachers that were with us were helping us get out and to climb the fence and just to get out of there.
For some, there was nowhere to go. Teachers trying desperately to keep everyone together throughout the tense and threatening time.
The shots were so close, as if he was right outside my door, but did not shoot through my door. And that moment, everyone just got closer together. Everyone just hugged each other, and it was like a moment where just so a thankful moment that he didn't, and he ended up going another way.
The bravery by the Stoneman Douglas staff saved countless lives, speaking volumes to the character of this community in crisis.
In a time of crisis, they took leadership, and they saved easily 30 to 40 lives as a result. That janitor, he probably saved over 100 lives.
And maybe 100 lives saved by just that one janitor. Andrew Dimbert reporting in Parkland. 7 News, Night Team.
Next up here on South Florida's Night Team.
Action! We need it now! These kids need safety now!
A mother's passionate plea to the president after losing her daughter in the mass shooting.
Fight or flight, a former FBI analyst shows how to protect yourself in an active shooter situation. This mass shooting has once again put the issue of gun laws front and center.
The night team's Jeff Lennox is live in the Satellite Center. He has more on this. Jeff.
Belkis and Craig, the issue has divided Congress for years now, and tonight, renewed calls for sweeping gun control.
Another massacre, leaving more families suffering unimaginable heartache.
President Trump, please do something! Do something! Action! We need it now! These kids need safety now!
A mother's painful plea to President Trump as she prepares to lay her daughter, 14-year-old Alyssa Alhadeff, to rest.
President Trump, you say, what can you do? You can stop the guns from getting into these children's hands!
And while this mother passionately calls on President Trump to take action on gun control, the commander-in-chief thus far talking only about healing and mental health as he addressed the nation on Thursday.
I want to speak now directly to America's children, especially those who feel lost, alone, confused, or even scared. I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be. You have people who care about you, who love you, and who will do anything at all to protect you.
After the deadliest mass shooting in Broward County, some lawmakers did bring up the question again.
Mr. Speaker, a point of parliamentary inquiry. Mr. Speaker, can you tell us when the House may muster the courage to take up the issue of gun violence?
House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi calling on her colleagues to look beyond thoughts and prayers.
We hope that we will have more than a moment of silence. Certainly, we pray for the families. But again, it's an assault on our whole country, and they are paying the price for our inaction.
U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions speaking at the Major County Sheriffs of America Winter Conference, sending a veiled but strong message.
I think we can and we must do better. We owe it to every one of those kids crying outside their school yesterday and all those who never made it out of that school.
Florida Senators Marco Rubio and Bill Nelson asking for action now.
I think it is a legitimate thing to say that even as we mourn, we have an obligation to ask ourselves, is there something we could have done or should do to ensure that we don't see these things happening?
At some point, we've got to say enough is enough. At some point, we as a society have got to come together and put a stop to this.
And Wednesday's shooting digging up pain from the past for many senators whose communities have been ripped apart by similar tragedies. Senator Chris Murphy represents Connecticut, where 20 children were killed at Sandy Hook Elementary back in 2012.
This epidemic of mass slaughter, this scourge of school shooting after school shooting, it only happens here not because of coincidence, not because of bad luck, but as a consequence of our inaction.
And also today, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin called on Congress to look into issues related to gun violence during a hearing on the president's budget proposal. Live in the Satellite Center, Jeff Lennox, 7 News 19.
Okay, Jeff, thanks.
Well, ahead tonight, we are going to look ahead to the weekend forecast.
Chief Meteorologist Phil Farrow is here with this. Phil?
And warm is the word. Take a look at this. The average high for this time of year, between 76 and 78 degrees. We are going to be in the 80s all the way through the weekend and much of next week. The entire forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
Night Team News Alert, we're learning from BSO there's been a school threat arrest.
Jeff Lennox is at the news desk with what we know about this right now. Jeff?
Yeah, Belkis and Craig, law enforcement has been warning over the last couple of days that copycats will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and we are now seeing this in action right here. You can see a photograph of a gentleman holding a gun with a mask on, black shirt, black tie right there, taking a picture of himself, a selfie, and then the caption reads, "Round 2 of Florida tomorrow." Well, as as we have said, and as what happened in this case, law enforcement took this seriously, and this man was arrested recently in South Carolina. Now, what's interesting about this story, other people have taken this photo across the country. They've doctored the photo and said that other schools would be under attack. Law enforcement is trying to gather all of those posts that have made their way online. They're trying to gather all those up, do research and investigate to see if they need to make more arrests in connection to this photo. But the person you see in this photo right here, unclear of the age on this person, but this man has been arrested, this copycat, if you will, arrested by authorities in South Carolina. We're live in the Satellite Center. Jeff Lennox, 7 News 19.
Now, 7 weather with Chief Meteorologist Phil Ferrell.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It was a beautiful day here across South Florida. Morning lows, 67 in Miami, 70 in Fort Lauderdale, 72 in Key West. And check out the highs in the upper 70s to the low 80s. No rain anywhere. Right now, mostly clear skies, 66 in Miccosukee, 71 Miami, Fort Lauderdale, 72, 74 in Key West. The pressure is steady. The wind out of the east-southeast all the way up to 9 miles per hour at the coast, and the humidity at 68%. Here's a storm tracker. Very little moisture in the atmosphere, so there is no rainfall anywhere. Right now, mostly dry, anywhere from the Bahamas across South Florida. From time to time, we have seen some small sprinkles making the way across the Florida Straits from the Atlantic all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. So we have high pressure dominating our weather here across the western Atlantic. By tomorrow, still a beautiful day, mostly sunny, dry. Temperatures once again in the upper 70s to the low 80s. And then for the first half of your weekend, it is looking really good, staying sunny. And if you like this warm weather with above average temperatures, this is the weekend for you. Here's the marine forecast for tomorrow. Threat of rip currents, the wind out of the southeast, Biscayne Bay with a light chop. For you throughout the Florida Keys, no advisories, 10-mile-per-hour winds, coastal waters with a light chop. Now your next high tide will be at 8:33 in the morning in Fort Lauderdale, Miami 9:02, Key West 10:35. So here's the forecast for tonight. Clear skies, a light beach breeze. Overnight lows will be in the low 70s with the wind out of the southeast 5 to 10 miles per hour. Meanwhile, by tomorrow, once again, another gorgeous day. Sunny skies. Highs will be in the low 80s with that wind out of the southeast 5 to 10 miles per hour. Now let's take a look at your extended outlook. The weekend is looking fantastic. Plenty of sunshine. We may see an isolated sprinkle on Monday due to the sea breeze. Highs will be in the low 80s. President's Day, very nice, high of 82. And then maybe a shower here or there Tuesday, Wednesday, and in through Thursday. That's your 7 on 7. 7 News will be right back.
It is a horrific and heart-stopping scene. Students running for their lives, racing to escape a school shooting. Sadly, mass shootings seem to be happening more and more. If you were caught in one, would you know how to survive? How to survive an active shooter. Retired FBI analyst Scott Hahn says follow your instincts and run.
There was a kid they interviewed, and he said, the minute I heard something, I knew it didn't sound right. This is the kind of kid that rest of the kids should really pattern themselves after.
While this may go against school plans designed to corral children into a single place to keep track of everyone, it can be the difference between life or death.
He told his friends, he said, no pictures, no Snapchat, let's get out of here. They ran over to the middle school, jumped a fence, and continued running until they got to a safe haven.
If you can't run, hide and fortify your hiding place as best you can with anything you can find, as demonstrated in this YouTube video.
Look for hardened materials to stand or hide behind.
That's what some of the students did at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School during Wednesday's massacre. Terrified, they hunkered down as shots rang out and waited for police to arrive.
And then we started to hear a gunshot in the hallway, and we all just kind of like ran towards my teacher's desk. We were all kind of like bunched up on top of each other right there, hiding.
If all else fails, fight with all your might as if your life depends on it, because it does.
If he makes it in anyway, throw anything you have at him. If you have books, if you have laptops, your laptop's not going to do you any good if you don't survive. Anything that's hardened to hurt somebody, throw it at him, scream, and then as you're fighting, fight to escape.
Even social media can be used as a lifeline to survive an active shooter.
As the kids are doing what they're doing, as they're being subject to this heinous act, It would be really nice to know where they're located, who's in the room with them, is anybody hurt, what situation they have in their room. They can hear the shooter outside, how many shooters there are. That kind of information can be picked up by law enforcement, and we can use that for a tactical advantage.
Well, the one thing we can all do to stay safe is to always have an exit strategy wherever we go.
And still ahead, coping with a crisis, how parents can help their children cope after a crisis.
And as we head to break, prayers for Parkland, more moving images from tonight's emotional vigil. The night team is coming right back.
As we mentioned, overwhelming pain in Parkland tonight. Thousands gathered to remember the victims of this tragedy. And tragedies like this one are, of course, difficult for everyone, particularly children, to process. That's why experts say the best thing parents can do to help them cope is to talk about it.
Kristen Kenner is one of thousands of nervous Broward parents who sent kids off to school this morning.
You know, I'm apprehensive. It's that same sort of 9/11 feeling that you have no control.
Her 16-year-old twins, Ryan and Lindsay, are juniors at Fort Lauderdale High School.
I thought it was important that they go to school today, at least to be around their friends, for people to draw a little bit of comfort in their same age group.
It was a difficult morning for everybody.
It was hard, honestly. It was, you know, after hearing, you know, some of my friends have died, you know, it's just like, it's hard to hear, and, you know, you don't know what to expect the next day.
Licensed mental health counselor Sarah Elise says it's important for kids to talk to each other and to parents after a tragedy like the Douglas shooting.
Create that open dialogue with them, allow them to speak and validate their feelings, ask them how they are feeling.
Kids seeing images of other children cowering in classrooms can create fear. She says to let kids know you're there to listen and support them and to seek help if their anxiety persists.
Even if it's for a couple of sessions, so you can be able to help them process that anxiety and learn coping skills to be able to process what's going on.
Ryan and Lindsay were only gone for a few hours today when the school sent out a code yellow alert.
That they had to stay locked in their classroom.
But the alert was just a precaution. When it was over, the kids headed home early.
I was just super anxious. I always hope going out the door that we'll be coming back through the door, but you know, you never know.
But talking it out with her mother is reassuring.
I think that talking to my parents and to my teachers about it will really help, and to my guidance counselors. Our school set up grief counselors for us.
For Ryan, he says open lines of communication and greater awareness of the people around you is key.
I guess one day at a time, honestly. I mean, that's all you can do at this point.
Experts say it's also important to remember the healing process is not immediate. The grieving process takes time. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
That does it for us here on 7 News First at 10. I'm Balkis Nuray.
I'm Craig Stevens. Stay tuned. The news continues.